Well, hey everybody, Pastor Steve here. Really thankful you've joined me for today's devotion. We are in the book of Jeremiah, the Old Testament prophet, chapter 40. Lamentations, which we looked at the last 2 days, were written by Jeremiah. Now we're back in his prophetic book, chapter 40, and the events here take place immediately after the fall of the city of Jerusalem. And this chapter always touches my heart because there's this scene in it in the early verses of Jeremiah and his life and what happened to him immediately after the city of Jerusalem was destroyed by the Babylonians. And the humanity of Jeremiah in this chapter just always grabs my heart. Chapter 40, verse 1, the word which came to Jeremiah from the Lord after Nebuzaradan. Now, this is not Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. This is Nebuzaradan, the captain, the army official that Nebuchadnezzar left in charge there in that area during the battle and after the collapse of Jerusalem. Captain of the bodyguard, he was very close to the king. He said had released Jeremiah from Ramah when he had taken him bound in chains among the exiles of Jerusalem and Judah who were being exiled to Babylon. In other words, you'll remember that Jeremiah was under arrest in Jerusalem during the siege. And when Babylon conquered the city, they put people in chains. They marched them out to Ramah, which is a town, if you will, north of Jerusalem. That became the staging place, the staging site for marching the exiles back to Babylon. It's also where Nebuchadnezzar the king executed Jehoiakim the king, or not Zedekiah rather, the king who had brought about this final revolt and destruction of the city. And so Jeremiah is brought there in chains with the other survivors in the city of Jerusalem, but this captain of the bodyguard, Nebuzaradan, releases him. He takes the chains off of him. And in verse 2, the captain of the bodyguard, the Babylonian official, had taken Jeremiah and said to him, "The Lord your God promised this calamity against this place." In other words, the Babylonians knew that Jeremiah had been preaching for Jerusalem not to resist Babylon because Babylon was God's instrument for judging Jerusalem. They knew that. And so they are reciting back to Jeremiah what he had been preaching. And you drop down to verse 4. Now, behold, I am freeing you today. So the Babylonian official says, Jeremiah, I am freeing you today from the chains which are on your hands. And then he gives them a choice. If you would prefer to come with me to Babylon, come along and I will look after you. If you want to go with us to Babylon, you're welcome to come and we will take care of you. We will provide for you. But if you would prefer not to come with me to Babylon, never mind, that's okay. Look, the whole land is before you. Go wherever it seems good and right for you to go. Anywhere in this country you want to go, or if you want to go with us to Babylon, and we'll take care of you. Jeremiah, you're free to go wherever seems right, wherever seems good to you. And verses 5 and 6, Jeremiah stays in Jerusalem, if you will. As Jeremiah was still not going back. In other words, he couldn't decide. He said, the Babylonian official said to Jeremiah, go back then to Gedaliah. Gedaliah is the man that the Babylonians appointed governor over the few people that remained in Jerusalem and Judah, and whom the king of Babylon has appointed over the cities of Judah. And stay with him among the people, or else go anywhere it seems right for you to go. And so the captain of the bodyguard gave him a ration and a gift and let him go. Gave him some food and some other items. What the gift is, we don't know, but he supplied he supplied Jeremiah with stuff to enable him to be okay and survive and be somewhat comfortable in the short term. And then Jeremiah in verse 6 went to Mizpah to Gedaliah. He went to where the king, well, not the king, but the new governor that would oversee the territory, the area on behalf of the Babylonians where he was ruling. And so that's where Jeremiah goes. Now, one of the reasons this story always touches my heart is because I think Jeremiah was torn in two directions. I think his mind said, go to Babylon. It'll be easier. It'll be more comfortable. They'll take care of me. But his heart was with the nation of Judah, the city of Jerusalem, the people, the Jewish people, even though they were the poorest of the poor, those who were left behind. And so in verse 5, as Jeremiah was still not going back, in other words, this Babylonian official had said, you want to go with us to Babylon? Fine. You want to go to Jerusalem? Fine. You want to go somewhere else? Fine. You're free to choose. And Jeremiah was still not going back. In other words, Jeremiah wasn't going anywhere. It was like he was just stuck. He was torn. He was pulled. He didn't know what to do, couldn't make up his mind. And that Babylonian official said, go, stay here. Go back to your people. Go to Gedaliah, the governor. See, I think this Babylonian official knew that Jeremiah's heart was with the people of God there in Jerusalem and the surrounding area, that his heart was still with his homeland. And so he encouraged him to go back to those people, to stay there, if you will. And sometimes you and I need encouragement, a gentle push to do what we want to do, what we know we need to do. And that's okay. Sometimes we need that encouragement, that word of affirmation, that little gentle nudge to finally take action, to finally do something, to finally make a decision. I remember when I was a junior in high school, I had started preaching that February and had preached several times in the months afterward. In late July, early August, our youth group from my home church was out in New Mexico at Glorieta, one of our two Baptist SBC camps at that time. Glorieta was similar to Ridgecrest, but it was on the West Coast out in New Mexico. And while there, I remember praying one night and formally surrendering in my own heart to God to be a preacher, because he was calling me, and I had been preaching, but I made the formal decision, God, I'm going to be a preacher. So we finally get back to Kentucky, get back home, and that following Sunday morning, I'm wanting to go forward and tell the church, but I know some of you will have a hard time believing this, but I have a shy streak in me, and I was really shy back then in certain ways. And I remember Jimmy, one of my best friends in high school, was sitting with me that morning, and I had told him what I'd done and what I wanted to do. And the invitation started, and we were singing a hymn, and I hesitated. And Jimmy just leaned over to me and said, go on. And immediately I started walking and went to the altar and publicly acknowledged that God had called me to preach. And, so all of us have those moments when we know what God wants us to do. We know what we want to do. We just need that gentle nudge, that gentle encouragement. And it's always blessed me to read about this Babylonian being the one God used to give Jeremiah that nudge to stay in his homeland with his home people. You need people like that in your life. You need godly people. Now, I'm not saying the Babylonian was godly, because God can use anybody, but you need godly people in your life who will sometimes just kind of nudge you in the direction you already know you want to go and should go. You just need that bit of encouragement. And do you know there are times you need to be that person for someone else? Hey, God bless you, and I'll see you tomorrow.